question. You guys are the first. I had to come to North Carolina, right? That's where I'm standing at, isn't it? Yeah. Come on, guys. You mean not one question out of all you farmers? Are you serious?
Where you buy this at?
Lewis Driver, this gentleman right here are my distributors. Lewis has been with me. I want to mention something. Lewis has been with our company now for...
Way before you were born.
He thinks I'm younger than that for some reason. How many years? 41?
I've been using the product for 45 years.
45 years. So I was 3 years old.
I hadn't used any other fertilizer at all. Hadn't used any lime for 30 years. The program works. It'll get you yields, big yields. And you throw Insta Gro in with what Robert's talking about, you're going to get something.
I've been liquid myself for 22 years, and back when we were dry fertilizer, it was religiously every other year to keep the pH at 6.5. We had to put 2 tons of lime down, and you best put it down. And after I went to liquid, I'm going in 10-year stretches, and I'm not even lose maybe a half to 1 point, depends. I've got the soil back like that. Look at the money at the price of lime. I mean, I don't like to ride that tractor so you keep putting the lime down. It's a timely thing. It's a costly thing now. And just think about it. And not only that, liquid is in the form where the plant will take it up right now. It may be 6 months, a year later before some quarries vary, some lines vary. But still, it's a lot of money being wasted out there, and it's coming from the dry fertilizers with the acids and the salts, knocking it down. And once we got away from that, that eliminated that problem.
You got to remember, that stuff's big business, you know, the dry fertilizer and muriate of potash, because that stuff creates such a high salt content. It creates a perfect atmosphere for insects and diseases to thrive. Well, then you got somebody making insecticides and fungicides. I mean, it's just a big money-making cycle. And so you had a question, sir, and I don't think I answered your question, and I asked for a question. Please. How many what?
How much it costs per gallon?
The cost per gallon?
Each product is different, so we'd have to get with you. Or each product a different price.
How about it compares with this liquid product with dry fertilizer?
Program-wise, you're going to be actually a little bit cheaper and on dry versus liquid for sure. Now, and remember, there's so many liquids out there. Some of these liquids are, you know, you don't know. You got to watch what you're getting so that you're getting something good. Like I said, we do guarantee our purity, virgin grade materials, and all the stuff that's inside of it. And so we are not going to be the cheapest on the block with all of our stuff we put into it. I'll tell you that right now. But we have the best quality, guaranteed that. And you know, we add things to it. If it was just a plain Jane 989 or 31818, it'd be a couple $1 a gallon cheaper, $1.50 a gallon cheaper. But you know, when you add stuff to it, it creates cost. But it's been worth it to add that to these products. They've just helped us so much in the field. And I'm looking forward to adding more different things like biological stuff, and I think that's something that'll just really, really help to move us forward with what we're doing, because what we're doing is working tremendously well for us, and we're getting some good soils out of it. Yes, sir. I run, a year or just as a starter. Here I'm going to run, yeah, I'll tell you what I put it down here. On the seed, I'm running anywhere from 5 to 8 gallons, okay?
Run that in the furrow?
Right in the furrow. Right on the seed. Right on the seed. That's where I want it. It's the most efficient way of when you're using a high quality plant food like this, I don't like it, have it 2 or 3 inches over. Because you got to remember, the soil has a tremendous amount of nutrition already locked up, and so you want little soil contact. You want that right on top of that seed. Now, you go further to the east and south, I don't put as much on. Down by Myrtle Beach, 50 miles, 40 miles from Myrtle Beach, I'm using about 3 gallons because they got organic matter of 0.02%. That's a big deal. Is there any 0.02% here? Don't think so. I mean, that's pure beach sand, so that makes a difference. So I'm using 5 to 8 here. Here at air initiation, I'm putting on 2.5 of 31818. And I'm putting on 1.5 of Super N nitrogen. Now the other thing on the Super N nitrogen that we're doing is we're reducing the rates up front too. Because you can put in, I can put in as high as 4, well, so that would give me about 13 units of nitrogen right in that corn by foliar feeding it. And so 13 units in the corn, that's a big deal as far as what you would put in the soil to get that much nitrogen in that plant. So you can really monitor your nitrogen rates by reducing it up front, put a little bit on here, a little bit on there. A nitrogen test is pretty cheap, fellas, compared to what it costs to put it down at such a high rate. You know, to think that nitrogen stays there all year is ridiculous. I know we'd like to, it costs a lot of money, and we think, well, we're putting it down there, it's there for us, right? There's a professor out of North Dakota that did a lot of work on nitrogen, and he says that 32% nitrogen, and these are 2 of the products he tested, at 64 degrees soil temperature, you can lose 50% of it within 2 weeks. Think about that. 50% of what you put down in 2 weeks at 64 degrees soil temperature. That's another thing that's important, fellas, to remember. Seed germinates at what? 52, 53, 51 on occasion, 54 degrees, right? Did you know that your soil's fertility really doesn't get cranking over until she gets up in that higher temperature soil, 68, 72 degrees. She's firing on all 8 cylinders. But at that low temperature, she hasn't really come back to life yet. So you're not even getting any help from what you build up in the soil at that point in time. But you planted a little seedling out there. That's what gives us an advantage of putting this on the row and getting it up and moving. Getting it moving, getting it looking for water from day one, not waiting for plant food. That's why a lot of times you see corn where it's a little cool in the spring and it's a little pale, it's not really doing much, get a little warm weather and boom, she's green. Some of that comes from not just the warm weather and the heat units, it's getting some plant food to that plant, it's conversion. So you can do it by doing this, and you don't have to worry about the water situation, the temperature, or things like that. It'll feed it. It just needs something to feed it to, a root structure or a plant leaf. So here I'm putting on 2.5 to 1.5. Here, there's a couple reports, one from Rutgers University, 1987. Look it up online, fantastic work. State of Illinois University put out 2 years ago the same type of research on monitoring the uptake of nutrition, the plant's nutrition through day 1 all the way to completion. And it's interesting, we've talked about this ever since we've been working with plant foods, that phosphorus, potassium, nitrogen, zinc is just as important at tasseling than it is in the beginning. And those reports will show you that it is exactly right. One of the reasons why we're getting such a good yield, you know, we're putting on 2.5 to 3 gallons of 3-18-18 here, and I'm putting on 2.5 gallons of 23% Super N. That's what we call our Super N nitrogen, which is also loaded with carbons and sugars and energizer and humics. Okay? So I'm using, at the low end, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 gallons. But I'm expecting 280 bushel, 350 bushel corn, too. Oh, yeah. Nitrogen separate from the starter. But you can reduce nitrogen up front by putting a little bit in the plant, you know, because, you know, I mean, 10, 12 units in a plant, it takes a lot of units beside the plant to get that much in the plant. So it's a good way to reduce nitrogen, and you can monitor because you can feed it without burning. Now, you can burn if you want to dump 20 gallons on there. You're going to burn it up pretty good. So you got to not put 20 gallons at one time on, but, you know, to put on 2 or 1.5 to 2.5 or 3 or 4 gallons, no problem. 2.3 pounds per gallon. Put on 4 gallons, you've got what? 10 units of nitrogen. Plus the 3-18-18 or 9-18-9, whichever you choose to use. And I've got a lot of guys that are doing this now because not putting so much nitrogen up front, getting ahead of what's coming, because eventually you will be told how much nitrogen you can put down. It will be controlled, phosphates, everything.
State of Maryland already has some.
Yeah, that's right. And it'll be according to soil test, and so you'll be told what your limits are. So a lot of guys are trying to get ahead of this, and they don't want to contaminate the rivers either. So, you know, and it's a proven fact. You know, you get down to the Gulf down there, and she's in bad shape, fellas. There's not much life, is there, down there? Where she dumps out into the Gulf of Mexico, the Mississippi River.
Life, just the wrong kind.
Yeah, well, right.
What product do you use for a starter?
if I'm not in a sandy soil, if I'm in a sandy soil, I'll use a 525. That's just what I like. And to be honest with you, phosphate, that's what she's after. So if I need a little potash, or I feel my potassium's a little on the low side, I'll go 318-18. I like, or 918-9. So the three that I use is this one, for my growers. See, I've handed some of my growers over to my distributors and things like that. I still write, 50 personal programs for some of my largest growers, and that's, 10,000 acres and above. I can't help everybody, but when I'm doing my program and writing my recipes, these are the three I use, right here. This is a nice one, no doubt about it. High in phosphate, 525 is a very nice product. 918-9 is a beautiful product. 318-18 is a beautiful product. What do you need, where's your potassium and things like that at? And he mentioned something up here about phosphate and how important it is. Phosphate is one of the most elements that are tied up. It's unbelievable. In fact, I had a fellow one time, I pulled a soil sample, and it's 1,000 pounds an acre. And I didn't actually pull it, but I got it back, and I said, did you pull this where the cows walk out of the barn? He says, no, not right there, but obviously it was a little too much phosphate. He needed phosphate worse than the guy down the roads. And had all that phosphate out there, but it was just tied up. When things get out of balance, you tie them up. And so phosphate's one that's hard to become soluble. It really is. Got to have it. So those are the three I use.
Another nice thing God, I love it. It just saves me a trip when I'm going to top dress wheat, that I can take their nitrogen and put like a, whether it would be a 918-9, 318-18, 515-15, I can blend it with the nitrogen and not have to make a special trip. That means a lot. I don't like to keep riding over the field. And it'll blend, don't have a problem. Some other companies, you can put it together if you sandwich it at the right time, the water like an Oreo cookie, but sometimes you just have a bad hair day and it doesn't work. This, mix it together, go on out there, get her done.
And it's beautiful the way she blends together, and we made it that way. It took a lot of work, it did, to get this type of nitrogen to mix with this stuff. But for grass hays and corn, soybeans, the nitrogen needed for soybeans are tremendous. If you want yield from soybeans, feed it some nitrogen. Not a lot, but this foliar feeding like I'm doing on soybeans, I run at third trifoliate. And see, that's another thing too. If you wait to fourth trifoliate, fifth trifoliate, you wasted your money. You might as well just throw it away, or give the money back, or give it away, or roll it down the window and throw it out the window. And that's no joke. You've got to hit it third trifoliate, or you're wasted. Now, you can be early, but if you're late, you're done. And what we're doing there is trying to set the bloom set. So we want as many bloom sets as we can get, preferably 5 or 7 per cluster, or 8. And then the next on spray for foliar feeding beans, believe it or not, you're investing some money and harvesting them 7-8 weeks later. You're doing it at 70%, 65% pod set. The uptake of nutrition at that time for soybeans is unbelievable. But we just don't have enough solubility to carry it all the way. So going over the top of it, great way to feed it. At that time, I'm using 318-18 and Super N nitrogen. Almost 4 to 5 gallon ratio. Like 2.5 gallons 318-18, 2.5 gallons of Super N nitrogen. And that is making some soybeans. I mean, really nice soybeans. So,
with this program showing up here, how much nitrogen are you putting on that?
well, it depends what his particular yield is. Is he used to 200 bushel or 220, 240? I mean, is he in an area that 106? Okay. I like to do it with around 160, 70 units. I don't like that pound and I got some putting on 1.5 pounds, 1.25 pounds per bushel. It's too much. It's too much. It's a waste. It really is. And with a program like this, you can monitor it. Splitting applying your nitrogen, first of all, is the best thing that we did when we first started, instead of putting it down all at once in the first place. Breaking it apart. That soil's like a sponge in a way. Okay? And if you take a sponge and you dip it in the water in a 5-gallon bucket, does it hold the whole 5 gallons? And so when we put all that nitrogen out there, it's just impossible to hold it. It's just gone. It is. That's just the way it is. It is. I know it's more work. I know foliar feeding's more work too. especially if you're not used to doing it. But who doesn't like profit? Anybody? And that's really what we're about, is profit after cost. This may cost you a little more money up front doing all the foliar feedings than what you've ever done before, but I guarantee you the profit in the end is better. Yes?
On your soybeans, have you ever run it in the fur on soybeans?
I do all the time at 3 gallons an acre.
I mean,
3 gallons. No more. No more.
and then you come back across the fly.
At third trifoliate, and then at 65% pod set. Now you can be a little earlier than 65% pod set. I wish I had that sheet from Rutgers University in Illinois showing the amount of phosphorus but potash taken up on soybeans at that stage. Tremendous. And you know, and their testing on there in 1987, they were raising 117 bushel beans back then. On a controlled area, obviously.
How many gallons total on soybeans?
On soybeans, I would use, now between the Super N and 31818, or do you want me to separate them?
Separate them out, that's it.
Well, on soybeans grow just a little bit kind of like corn, except that you're going to have, for instance, instead of quite such of a drop, it just grows a little bit like this. It's not such a big deep. But you got here 3 gallons, and I would put on 2 gallons of 31818, for instance, and maybe just 1 gallon of Super N. And then here's the third trifoliate, and that's here. And right there I would put on about 2.5 to 3 gallons of 31818. 31818 is better price per unit than 51515, okay? It's just, if you got, I know 51515 is cheaper than 318, and even with us, but price per unit, you're carrying more water, is what you're doing. 2.5 gallon 318. Then we've got, I usually use 1.5 gallon of 23, and then your 65% pod set, I'm putting on about 2.5 of 31818 to 3 gallons, and then I'm running about 2 to 2.5 of Super N nitrogen. I'm putting in there about 8 units of nitrogen at that time into the leaf. So 8 units in the leaf is like putting down 25, 30 off the side. That's the Super N nitrogen, yeah. Yeah, you can't use 28 or 32, you'll burn them up. You guys know that. Yeah, this is Super N nitrogen 23. We'll call it Super N. That was one of my deals. I come up with that. Me and Owen McIntyre helped me balance the pH a little better. But I was missing it, you know. I was in the fields walking and monitoring these yields, and we always got good yields on foliar feeding with just 318, 19.9. But I needed a source of nitrogen, and how could I get it? And so we made a food-grade urea nitrogen, high in carbon, sugars, and boy, it's nice. The only bad thing is with Super N nitrogen is she will not take freezing temperatures. Now, if you blend it with 31818, she'll hold together nice. So I always tell fellas, you know, don't try to hold a semi-load or an extra 2,000 gallons and try to overwinter it. It just doesn't like the heat. Actually, it was designed for about 170 degrees, and we got her down to about 33 degrees. But she will not take freezing temperatures. And so I wait to ship it, or I add 31818 right to it. Like I had a fellow that plants 5 gallons of 31818 and 2 gallons of Super N nitrogen for the seed. And I just shipped him 30,000 gallons, and it holds together beautiful out there. So, but separately, you know, she don't like real cold weather. But it's such a beautiful product. Foliar feed, no burn, gorgeous. And you can monitor your nitrogen that way too. But thanks for the question. By golly, you guys came to life finally. Any other ones though I can help you with if you like. Can you what? Yes, you can put chemicals with it, Roundup and other chemicals. The only thing you can't use, your 989, 31818s for post herbicides, always 100% guaranteed. Calcium and Roundup, no. It will not mix together, Instacount Roundup. And I got to laugh a little bit about Monsanto. Nothing, you know, you guys have what you say about them. I'm not going to say anything bad about them. But, you know, they fought the foliar feeding, or they didn't think much of foliar feeding, okay, for years. Although they were killing stuff. How do you kill stuff? You foliar feed it, right? That's what you're doing. So it was kind of silly anyways when they say they didn't really think foliar feeding paid, but our herbicides work systemically and we foliar feed them. Crazy. So they caught on to what we were doing. It took them 45 years. But if you look at the back of Roundup, especially your Ready Fast or whatever they call that, Rain Fast or whatever it is, it's got phosphate, orthophosphate in the Roundup. You know why? Because that molecule of orthophosphate can move in the plant, like I said, in 3 seconds to the root structure. So they're using the Roundup, attaching it to the molecule of phosphate, getting into the plant quick. Therefore, we can't mix calcium and phosphates together. They won't mix. Other than that, yes, pre-emerge herbicides, which I see some guys getting back into because the Roundup thing was great, but now it's having problems, just Roundup killing everything and controlling. So I see a lot of guys going back to some pre-emerge or other herbicides along with Roundup. Yes, you can. The only thing I say is when you do Roundup, if you're using Roundup, don't put manganese with it. I've seen terrible results with it. I know guys do it all the time. Manganese is important to soybeans tremendously. If I've got a fellow using Roundup and he's going to put Roundup here, I put it in the seed. If he's not using Roundup, then I put it on at foliar. And boron is another element, fellows, we're not paying attention to. Okay, boron's becoming really, really low, and we need it. It helps the uptake of potash. It helps the uptake of calcium in the plant. It's the stalk strength. It's important. Small amounts, pint an acre, half a pint an acre into the leaf.
At the later stages on a plant, say wheat, soybeans, even vegetables, the 3-18-18, would that bring it in and make everything mature at one time?
There's another thing too, fellas, and I get a kick out of this because a lot of guys don't. I know. Well, I've worked with enough fellas, and sometimes they look at you and say, "Do I really believe this story or not?" And fortunately, I've got enough good guys out there that have had such good results. I always give a couple numbers out and say, "Hey, talk to this farmer here." And I know that's an awful lot to ask to you guys because I got some farmers that spend probably a little more time than they really want to talking to other guys. So I'm careful about that. But if you use this program, it'll mature your corn 2 weeks early. Every time. 10 to 14 days guaranteed. You'll reach early maturity. And up in the north part of the country, that's really important because them poor fellows got to worry about frost in the middle of August. And so they got a very short growing window. But it'll hit every time. I don't know who asked me that question or you brought it up. But corn, 2 weeks maturity, and that's important, guys, especially if you got a late season, maybe an early frost coming in. Some areas it matters, some areas it doesn't. But with produce, yes, I got fellows that raise tomatoes and things, and I'll guarantee it works. 3-18-18, put them on the tomatoes. If it's going to frost, you got to put them on before the frost. But it'll protect them down to about 27, 28 degrees. It'll heat them up that much. Yep. So if you want the little bottles of 3-18-18, they're only $1,000 a bottle for that. So buy the bigger containers, it's cheaper. No, I'm just joking with you anyways. Aren't you guys getting hungry yet? Any other questions, fellas?
I want to thank Freddie for
Thank you, Freddie.
letting us come into this fine.
Appreciate that. Does anybody else have any other questions? Are you guys ready to go eat, are you? Or
Oh, yeah.
am I allowed to say a prayer?
He's ready.